So if you see your name with the title Mr. or Mrs., or they use our name in uppercase, this is back to Admiralty-Law.
The legal fiction is an abstract term to explain a concept, and so is the term straw man.
With debt collectors, people assume when a debt collector comes round that they have actual power. They don't. They have no power whatsoever. They only have the power that you give to them.
What are you doing? Film this, please. Don't obstruct me. I'm not obstructing you. Right. Show us the warrant.
So we don't consent. You need our consent.
That's the end of it.
Do you mind telling me who you
I
are?
won't tell you anything.
So you're a police officer enforcing laws, but you don't know every law, is that right?
That's correct.
90% of the crime, or 99% of the crime they perceive that is crime, is actually called victimless crime. There is no victims, and crime can only exist if there is a victim.
You know, we've seen police officers more interested in becoming debt collectors and enforcing policies, you know, such as speeding tickets and fines and things like that, because they're easy targets.
Once you comprehend the difference between lawful and legal, and ultimately what your legal fiction straw man is, the fear of debt collectors, police and authority just goes away. If you live in the UK, you are led to believe that the Queen is the only sovereign. This is wrong. The Queen is given authority through the coronation oath. Her oath was a binding contract between the Crown and the people of this nation. This means that we, the people, gave her her sovereignty. And as everyone knows, you can't give away something you do not possess yourself. That means that each and every one of us is sovereign. We each have supreme independent authority over our own flesh and blood human body. The problem is, we have forgotten we are powerful. We have forgotten that we belong to and are part of one of the most amazing species that to our knowledge has ever existed. We have become media obsessed, and in turn obsessed with our own appearance and the way people think about us. The TV is king, but now that is slipping to the constant need to be in touch with our friends. Everything is about fear. Fear of debt, fear of terrorism, fear of ill health, or fear of climate change. This keeps us thinking that we need our government to protect us and rule us. With all this distraction, it is no wonder that most of us didn't notice the massive fraud that our countries and nations around the world have pulled on us. But as you will learn, government is a creation of man, and a creation of man can never be above man. They always need your consent, and this is where your power really lies. With knowledge always comes power, the power not to fear, the power to take a stand against anyone or any corporation that threatens you, the power to say no. It has been said that you need to know that you're in a cage before you can escape from that cage. Let's look into how you're being tricked and how your power is being hidden from you. If you've never heard of the terms legal fiction or straw man, then what you're about to learn is something that sounds so astonishing that it couldn't possibly be true. If I were to tell you that paying your tax, getting a driver's license, registering your car, paying fines, and attending court are all optional and that you are conned into agreeing with them, what would you think? All statutes and acts are optional too. Your straw man is a fictitious legal entity created at your birth through your birth certificate and the registration of that birth.
Okay, my understanding of the legal fiction, which is also referred to as the straw man, the way I explain it when I do talks, I keep it really, really simple. And what I do, I liken it to a game of Monopoly. Now, in a game of Monopoly, you actually have a little token like a dog or a battleship or a hat, you know, like a little top hat, and you move it around the board. Now, I believe that they actually give us a fictional entity which we can actually use or not use. And I believe this is and a lot of other researchers do as well, that this is your name in either uppercase or with a title.
That when each person is born, whenever a human being is born, there's two entities. One is the real entity, which is the human being, the flesh and blood, and the other is a legal fiction, a fictional entity that is nothing more than a piece of paper, the birth certificate. Again, we're duped into believing that these are one in the same, and so we're tricked into representing the legal fiction, the straw man, that birth certificate. So when people get fines and things like that, it's actually consulting the legal fiction, the non-existent entity, the corporate entity that is owned by corporations.
You have any interactions with the bureaucracy, okay? They're not interacting with you. They're actually interacting with your legal fiction, because they can't deal with a flesh and blood human. Yeah, they have to deal with another corporation.
When you start to break down the words that we use and you start to look at the roots of all these words, and you actually look at where these words, what these words actually really mean, you start to get an idea of what's going on. The word corporation is very, very specific, because it's corp and oration, it's dead speak. So a corporation is something that's dead. It's an entity that exists only in a legal framework. It doesn't exist in any other framework at all. It only becomes an entity through legal mechanisms and legal means.
In essence, when you were born and far too young to understand, a company with your name was created through your birth certificate. When your parents registered your birth, they actually created a company and handed ownership of that company and you over to the state. It is important to remember that your parents were tricked and had no idea this was happening. This is why the state can take children from their families and it not be classed as kidnapping. They own your child.
They own 1/10. Because they registered the child, they have 9/10. Possession is 9/10 of the law. But there's 1/10 floating about somewhere. And the government have claimed that 1/10. So when the child, because I've had it from social workers, at least now 3 social workers on separate occasions have come out of audiences and actually said to me, you're right in what you're saying, is because we have to get the birth certificate within 48 hours of taking the child. And if they can't get the birth certificate, they have to reapply to be able to get the birth certificate. They have to get it, because that is proof of who the slave is, what the slave is. And actually, in legal terms, they're actually only entitled to the birth certificate and not the child. To take the child on the pretense that they are this legal personality is theft. So in legal terms, it's kidnapping. But for social services, can use legal kidnapping, because everything is okay as long as it has the stamp legal applied to it. That includes war, genocide. Anything is okay as long as it's okay, it's legal.
The same thing also happens when you register your car. You get a document back saying you are the registered keeper and not the registered owner.
So yeah, obviously we've just spoken about registering children, and the other thing that we register though is our vehicles. And obviously either of those can allegedly be taken off you at some point in time, which is quite interesting. The 2 registered items are the things that can be taken.
You are the registered keeper of your car. You're not the owner, you're the keeper in their eyes. Now they'll argue that point, and a lot of people will argue that point, but it's quite easy to quell this argument and say, well, okay, if you don't put tax on the car, then they'll come and take your car. Now, in the legal world, taking anything from someone without a legal mechanism to do so is theft.
The legal system cannot deal with humans. It can only deal with pieces of paper. Only common law can deal with humans. So at your birth, they created a piece of paper with your name on it, in capitals, just like any other corporation. This is done to dupe you later in life into thinking that you are the legal entity and not you. Then imaginary penalties and cost are imposed on the straw man, and you, thinking you are it, pay them.
And it's kind of like an overcoat, this legal fiction. You know, as soon as you put it on, as soon as they invite you to put this overcoat on, and you do so, now they can grab hold of the overcoat and throw it in jail with you in it. But until you put that overcoat on, they can't do anything to you, because you are not that name. You know, you think you are, you know, you're taught you are, but you're not.
The deception is done through the manipulation of words and language.
But that to me is legalese. It's just jargon that no one really understands, and because no one really understands it, no one ever questions it. We basically have a discussion that everybody is taught incorrect, but because everybody's taught incorrect, they believe it's correct.
Legalese is a whole language of its own. It's a complete legal jargon that's not really designed for anybody to understand it other than those that are supposedly supposed to be enforcing it. And it's something that's so complicated that not even police officers understand what they're saying.
What is wonderful is that they create their own language called legalese, and it has a completely different interpretation from English. You know, we're supposed to have you know, this sort of understanding that we were within the law, and yet they're not even using the same language as we are.
The easiest way to understand legalese is to realize that there are many English words that have more than one meaning, depending on whom you are talking to. If I were to ask you what a person was, you'd probably say a human being, but that's you or I. If you were talking to someone in the law society, i.e. a police officer, lawyer, judge, etc., they have a different dictionary to you or I, and person could mean company or corporation, i.e. the legal fiction.
You know, if you tell a lie often enough, it becomes truth, or certainly the perception of truth. So legalese is jargon that nobody understands other than those who actually come up with a jargon that really, really deeply understand it. And even police officers don't understand it, or magistrates, or even judges for that matter.
Tax is probably the best way, the only way better than fractional reserve banking to starve a community is taxation. And it wouldn't be that case if the tax was actually spent on the people and on the land, but because it's not, it becomes a starving of the people. This is again comes back to corruption. And tax would be fine. We'd be living in an amazing health service, incredible roads, all the rest of it, if all the money that went into the taxation pot was paid for what it was supposed to be for. My understanding is it isn't. The problem that we have is the implications for its non-use is that, other than fraud, it's the only debt that can deprive you of your liberty. It's the only debt that they can put you in jail for is tax evasion or tax fraud, which is pretty serious really, because you can ignore as many credit cards or loans as you like and you can never be put in jail for any of that. But if you try and not pay your tax for a while, they'll really like to let you know about that. Funny thing is, I don't see many representatives of people like Amazon or big corporates that aren't paying their tax in the slammer. Maybe they should be.
income tax in the UK first started in 1799 as a temporary measure to cover the costs of the Napoleonic Wars. It is still a temporary tax today, which expires each year on the 5th of April and has to be renewed as a provision in the annual financial bill. Income tax was withdrawn in 1816, but was re-established in 1842 and has stayed since. Because of this, human beings are the only creatures on the planet that pay to live on it. The government does not own the product of your labor. If they did, you would be a slave. Since they do not own the product of your labor, then taxation can be defined as theft, or more accurately, extortion and blackmail. No man can own another, so no man can own the fruits of another man's labor. Most people will argue that it is a necessary evil, and that it's legal because the government say that it is. How else would we pay for hospitals, police, roads, and so on? Well, reaching into your own pocket to help a good cause is noble. Reaching into someone else's pocket under the threat of force is despicable. Here is a quick analogy. I run a construction firm, and I knock at your door and demand £10,000 to build an extension, or I'll take all your stuff and throw you in a cage. Essentially, that's what the government do when they tax you. They say they're going to supply you with services and protect you, but if you don't pay them, just like the mafia, they are the ones that come after you and use force and violence to get the money out of you. The trouble is, most people never look at these situations from these angles, and so rarely see the deception that is constantly being pulled over our eyes. A large percentage of all the tax you pay is used on war, bailing out the banks, and paying off the national debt. It has been calculated that 47% of all your income is spent on tax. You work 5 to 6 days a week and get to keep 54% of your wages. Then you have to pay for your mortgage or rent, gas, electricity, water, food, clothes, and that's just the basics. No wonder both parents have to work and work constantly, unlike families of just 50 years ago. You are a slave, and you're in a metaphorical cage that, just like Neo, you cannot touch, taste, or smell. A prison created by the mind of man. Governments essentially run human farms and feed you the perception of freedom. Governments do not make money within themselves. The government's primary function is to trick money out of your pocket and feed it into their business, so they can carry on with wars, deception, and human farming, all in plain sight.
They have no lawful basis for whatever they do. There's, they might claim they have a legal basis. Now, legal is a different thing altogether. It's essentially based on contract. You have to contract with them before it becomes law.
This is a prison without bars. This is a prison without big walls to keep them in. It's just a prison of the mind.
The main implication of not paying tax is that you'll grow a set of balls and you'll turn into an adult. That's the main implication.
The three functions of money are distinguished as 1. A store of value or purchasing power, the ability of an item to hold value over time. 2. A medium of exchange. Money serves as a medium of exchange, i.e. an asset that the sellers will accept as payment. A medium of exchange allows people to eliminate the use of barter. 3. A unit of accounting, a way of placing a specific price on economical goods and services. As a unit of accounting, the monetary unit is used to measure the value of goods and services relative to other goods and services. Money in its modern form arose from goldsmiths who retained gold and other precious metals in their safes and in exchange they gave certificates to prove the deposits. People then started to exchange the certificates for goods and services, and the goldsmiths very quickly realized they could make a lot of money out of just looking after other people's valuable goods. They're now no longer a goldsmith, but running a deposit facility, took in gold and other precious metals as deposit and issued deposit notes that the public used as money, backed by the gold in the deposit facility's safe. The goldsmith soon realized that very few people actually redeemed the gold, and so he started to give out loans in the form of deposit notes, knowing that he only needed around 10% of actual gold in his safe, as that would cover, even on a busy day, the amount of people exchanging certificates for gold. The deposit facility would then require the loan repaid plus interest, and this was the birth of modern banking. Through the years, money has been backed by, given a store of value, by the silver standard and gold standard, meaning you could redeem the note for gold, just like it says on this US note here, if you so required. On the 21st of September 1931, the gold standard was abolished in the UK, and on the 13th of August 1971 in the United States. Since 1971, the majority of the planet now use fiat currency. Fiat currency is money backed by nothing and has no value. It only has value because it's decreed as such by the government, and more importantly, we all believe it has value. The only entities that have the legal authority to create money are the Treasury and the banks, and they create it out of nothing. Martin Wolf, the Financial Times chief economic commentator, said this: only 3% of money is physical and 97% is electronic, and this electronic money is completely controlled by the banks. To repeat again, the banks create money out of nothing and then lend it to you and ask you to work